Now let's get into, I want to talk about the Complex top 50 Atlanta rappers list. Now, I'm not going to go over the full top 50 list and debate on, what's this, who's this, is this worth it, is this that, blah, 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 right? I just want to talk about the top 10 because the top 10 is what got mainly my attention and what I mainly disagree about, right? Going over the list, you got at number 50, Lil Nas X, number 49, Pee Wee Longway. Going down the list, you get K-Camp at 45, Lil Scrappy at 44, B.O.B. at number 43. Going down the list, you get, Rich Homie Quan at 37. Bankroll Fresh is way too high on the list. Number 34, they tripping, bro. Rest in peace, Bankroll, but he was not higher than a lot of these other people mentioned. Lil Scrappy got a bigger hits than Bankroll Fresh. I mean, Money in the Bank, fucking, what else? What are the other records? Gangsta, well, the one with Lil Jon, man, slipping my mind. But he's got way bigger records than Bankroll Fresh ever had. So that, they put him way too high up on there. Childish Gambino's at number 33. You're going down now. This is what I disagree with as well. Young Dro's at number 29. Nah, man. Dro had, here's the thing, too. Dro's career had like a second leg with that song, Fuck That Bitch, when that came out in like 2014 or 2012, somewhere around there. So he had his first leg with Shoulder Lean, Rubber Band Banks, and Ain't I, and then he had that Ain't I record with Young LA and T.I. He had his moments, just not off that, but just Young Dro had his own style, and he's still lyrically one of the best that I've ever heard coming out of Atlanta, period. So he should be a lot higher. They got Soulja Boy number 28. He should be, I think, higher because literally he created the whole dance thing. Everybody started fucking doing dances, and he's not a one-hit wonder. He's had, a few hits under his belt. JID is at number 27. Going down, you got Lotto at 25. Way too high on the list for Lotto. No disrespect. Lil Yachty, way too high on the list, number 24. Waka Flocka, 23. I can respect that. Charlotte Low, 22. I can respect that because they know, hey, hello. Like that record, and I live in Atlanta, so when I went to the club and I heard that bitch, that song was set the bitch on fire. The whole club was going crazy. So Charlie Low, rest in peace. He's got, like, just off that record alone, he's probably easily top 30. Gunna at 20 should be higher on the list. Takeoff at number 19. Lil Jon number 18 should be higher on the list. Jermaine Dupri number 17. CeeLo Green number 16. Quavo number 15. Killer Mike number 14. Offset is higher than literally like fucking every Migos member. I disagree. I think Quavo, because Quavo's been on hooks and he's got like his own thing, but whatever. Playboi Carti at number 12. I disagree. I don't even think Playboi Carti, but I know a lot of people fuck with him because today's generation likes ass music, unfortunately. 21 Savage at number 11. I disagree with because here's who they put right in front of him. Lil Baby at number 10. I think those two should have been flipped. No disrespect to Lil Baby. He had his run, but he hasn't really lasted. Like right now, Lil Baby isn't popping. He had that record with Central C. We can go band for band, which was a dope track. But other than that, he hasn't been popping since, I think, 2022. Like he had his run like, what I want to say 2008. He had 2017 a little bit. That's when he started popping off, with Yes Indeed and like these records here and there. All of a sudden, all these records. And then in 2018, he started really catching a run. And then he probably lasted to 2021, 2022. After 2022, I kind of felt like people were starting to stop fucking with him. I stopped really listening to him like that. I thought he would have had a better, longer run than that. But these should be flipped. 21 Savage has had a bigger run, especially with that Drake collab album. His recent album he just dropped earlier this year. He's had a longer winning a Grammy with J. Cole, and I felt like he's had a longer career and he's been out a lot earlier, a little bit earlier, not really a lot earlier than Lil Baby. And he's just a better overall artist, I think, 21 Savage is. So that should have been flipped. 21 Savage should have been in the top 10. Lil Baby should have been 11. You got 2 Chainz at number 9. I can debate this, but I can see why. Because 2 Chainz had his first run in 2006, Duffel Bag Boy with his homie and Play a Circle, and then reinvented his career and had a whole nother run. So you got to respect that. It's really hard to reinvent your career and have a whole nother run in your career. So just based off that, I can see why they gave him number 9. Big Boy number 8, I would argue needs to be higher. And you're going to see why I'm saying that. So Big Boy, he's got I love that Sir Let's Just Left Foot album, whatever the fuck it's called. That's probably one of my favorite Atlanta albums that's ever come out. But yeah, he needs to be higher because he's actually had a career after Outkast. Isn't scared to release solo albums. Mr. Flute Guy, Mr. 3000, whatever the fuck your name is. Because I'm going to go in on him because he's fucking too high on this list. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Big Boy should be higher, though. Yeah, he sold a lot of records, had a lot of success with Outkast, had a lot of success with his solo career, had a lot of success acting, had a lot of success doing his thing. So shout out to him. He should be higher. Ludacris at number 7. Not bad. You know what? I'm not really mad at that. Ludacris had his run and then kind of faded out and did acting. But when he did have his run, he was dominating. So I'm not mad at number 7. That's a good place for Ludacris. I think he's one of the best lyrical rappers out of Atlanta as well. But, you know, he had his run and just, you know, kind of stopped. And it is what it is. No disrespect, but he did his thing. Number 6, Young Thug. I think kind of hard to. I like Ludacris over Young Thug, but I'm always the person that has respected the early 2000s more than these newer generation artists. But I can see why people would say Young Thug is above Ludacris because Young Thug, you know, in today's time, a lot of artists seem to have a longer careers because they're more in front of our faces because of social media. But when you really look at the numbers and you look at where they chart and songs and stuff, you would say Ludacris is bigger than Young Thug. Ludacris had a lot more, I think, hits. Let's go over. Let's see. He's had 4 number ones. So yeah, Young Thug's had 3 number ones. Young Thug's had 8 top 10s, and Ludacris had 8 top 10s. So they're pretty equal. Young Thug's had one more number 1 album than Ludacris because he's had probably a little bit longer career. So yeah, you could argue back and forth on these two. I'm not really mad at those numbers. Jeezy at number 5, I agree. I think that's a perfect spot because he should be top 5 of Atlanta all time because he's had that big of an impact. But then he's kind of fallen off and just, he's done his thing. He's had his run. And I think he's impacted Atlanta culture forever. So number 5, I agree with that. Gucci, number 4, I agree with that because Gucci never really reached insane mainstream success. He's had records here and there that did really well with, Ray Shremmerd. What's that record? Black Beatles, I think. That was like a major mainstream record that went number 1 for him that he was featured on. Other than that, he's had like a lot of street moments and he's had records here and there chart, but they weren't like mainstream where everybody's fucking with it. But that doesn't matter because Gucci's influence just in Atlanta of just putting on artists, tapping them and saying, yo, come fuck with me and rock. A lot of these artists that are on this list came from up under Gucci because he paid for their studio time, showed love to them without having to sign them or put them under and blah, blah, blah. So just off that alone, he deserves top 5. Just like the fact that he's the godfather, basically, of Atlanta and has respected and shown love to a lot of artists. And then, he's had his moments where he's reinvented himself, got out of prison, had another leg in his career where he had a lot of great records. So I agree. Number 4 is perfect. This is where the top 3 is where I'm like, okay, this is not, I disagree with this. So you have T.I. at number 3. I disagree. I would put T.I. I'm willing to argue with people that T.I. belongs at number 1 or number 2. Because here, number 2 is Future. The only 2 in Atlanta that I'm willing to entertain at the number 1 or number 2 spot is T.I. or Future. That's it. Future, here's why I would put T.I. at number 1 over Future. Future, DS2 is fucking, I think one of the, I don't know, I might put it in my classics list, but to me, I have a very strict, classics, list. But the more I listen to DS2, the more I don't have a song. Because to me, a classic is where I don't skip a single song. And on DS2, I think I skip 1 or 2 tracks. I got to go back and listen to it because I haven't listened to it in a minute. But to me, it's basically a fucking 9.9 out of 10. I got to go back and listen to it. I might even clarify a classic. I know a lot of people have different clarifications for classics, so don't go in on me and be like, oh, it's a classic Quake, blah, blah, blah. My clarifications for classic are very strict. I don't throw that word around lightly at all. So Future for me is, he's had his run, and he's still on a run. Obviously, he's not like he's dead. It's not like nobody's fucking with his music. But here's my critique. He's relied heavily on Drake. Heavily. When you think of Future, you do think of Drake as well. Because a lot of the hits that Future's had, a lot of the number ones too, is with Drake. That's why I would put T.I. over Future, because T.I. hasn't had to rely on certain artists to be number one. Period. And T.I., to be honest with you, and I've argued this, what artist has had a 3-album back to back to back? And I'm talking year after year after year. Not talking like back to back as in like, oh, you drop an album in 2000, 2002, and 2004, like Eminem, right? Let's just say you drop Marshall Mathers, you drop Eminem Show, then Encore. I'm talking back to back as in year after year after year, meaning T.I. had a back to back to back run that no artist has done at that level. So he dropped, King in 2006, dropped T.I. versus T.I.P. in 2007, and then dropped Paper Trail in 2008. Year after year after year, and each album sold more than the other, and each album had more hits than the other, all while going through a process of being potentially arrested for years and years and years, all while losing his best friend, getting shot up and killed, all while all this stuff is going on. Under that pressure, he dropped back to back to back and fucking delivered over and over and over again. That run alone, just not even in Atlanta, just in hip-hop, period, is one of the best runs I've ever seen, period. And I'm talking back to, like I've explained this because I know people are going to go in the comments and say some shit and blah, blah, blah. I'm talking year after year after year. The only one I can think of is DMX, where he dropped in 1999 twice and then in 2000 again. I think in 2000 or 2001. Might be 2000. Yeah, I think he dropped 2000. That's where he had like a back-to-back-to-back where it was like insane. But T.I. had a better because he had number one hits. DMX didn't get number one hits songs, but he did get number one albums, obviously, and sold astronomical amounts. Future never had those moments, and Future has relied on Drake a lot in a lot of moments. But Future has, I think, the overall better album of T.I. If you were to put T.I. in Future's catalog and you were to choose what's the best album out of those artists, I would say it's DS2. I think DS2 beats any T.I. album, and just the best album. I think one of the best albums to ever come out of Atlanta, period. That's not to say that T.I. hasn't dropped amazing albums. I love T.I. versus T.I.P. I think it's damn near up there as one of the best albums. That's, it's damn near a classic for me too. But Future, to me, that's where I kind of give the edge to T.I. T.I. hasn't had to rely. Now, T.I., he's had a run. He's been out since 2003 up until, you can say he was relevant up until 2014. Because he still had that record with Iggy Azalea, No Mediocre. Yeah, No Mediocre. That came out like 2012, some shit like that. And then he had a run a little bit in 2014, 15, little records here and there, and then kind of fizzled out. So about a 10-year, 10 to 12-year run, which is great. Most artists don't have that type of run. Now, could T.I. make another run and make a comeback? Potentially. But Future's still on his run. I don't think he was dominating because I went to a Future concert back when I lived in Iowa, and this was it when he dropped his Honest album. And mind you, we're in Iowa, so I'm not really going to gauge the audience, of how big he is there. But, bro, there's barely any people at that concert. We probably had maybe 60 to 80 people at that concert. And he could have filled up at least 1,000 to 1,500 people in there. That's and I have video footage of this moment. And I don't know if I recorded the crowd. I think I did. But it wasn't much people, man. Maybe 100 people in there, max. But then once he had his DS2 and that mixtape run, dropping Monster and all these mixtapes, blah, 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 then, you could say, okay, now he's on his run. So, Future is up there. Future has records, and Future has delivered. So I'm not mad at Future. If he was number 2 or number 1 at people's list, I'm not even mad at that. But T.I. definitely, it's against T.I. versus Future, like for the number 1 spot. Now, what Complex has as number 1, I am disgusted, and I'm tired of this guy getting overhyped to astronomical levels. They got Andre 3000 number 1. This guy has never released a solo album, has relied solely on the Outkast name, and that's why he gets this respect and love. Listen, Andre 3000 should be top 10, period. There's no debates on that. I have no arguments with somebody. If somebody said, hey, Andre 3000 is number 7, number 8, number 6, he's not top 5 to me, period. I would not argue top 5. But people are like, oh, he's a storyteller, lyrical, he's this and that. I agree. He's top 10 all time. That is respectable. That's not disrespectful to be top 10 all time. But to be number one, you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. That's why I don't put Future at number one, because Future's relied, believe it or not, heavily on Drake. A lot of the hit records that he's had is because it happened with Drake. T.I., on the other hand, has relied solely on himself and actually built a somewhat successful record label. We had Young Dro, we had B.O.B., we had Iggy Azalea, we had Young L.A. Who else you had on the Young Grand Hustle? Regardless, those four, just Young Dro, Iggy Azalea, and B.O.B., all had major mainstream success at one point. Now, did they have lustrous careers, like 50 Cent with Eminem or Lil Wayne with Drake? No, but they had respectable careers where they sold millions of records. And they had number one hits. So T.I. deserves respect from that aspect as well. So T.I. built off his own name and just built himself. And he's been a part of legendary beefs as well. Like, Andre 3000, he hasn't really had cultural moment. Like Outkast, yes. Guys, we're going to give a round of applause to Outkast. Amazing group. The best group of all time, arguably. You could argue that, right? But Andre 3000 as a solo artist, all he's given us is a flute album. That's it. So how is this guy number one, man? You got to show respect to the previous artists that have delivered and stood on their own 2 feet. So I disagree with Andre 3000 being number one. I think that's bullshit. I love him, and I'm not disrespecting him, right? He deserves to be top 10, period. He does not deserve to be top 5. I disagree with that. If you argue top 5, I can kind of see your point, but top 10, 100%. But yeah, that's for me on this list. I think T.I. should be number 1. Future should be number 2. Number 3 should be Gucci Mane, because he's had his hand in a lot of careers. Number 4 should be Jeezy. And then you could argue the rest. You could argue Young Thug, Ludacris, all these people, Big Boy, Andre 3000, so on and so forth. But I think 21 Savage should be top 10, and Lil Baby should be kicked out of the top 10, because that's the only part I disagreed as well. But the rest of the list, you could argue on a lot of these artists, man. But yeah, that's my take on it. Let me know what you guys think of the list.